Welcome to my second video tutorial in a series dedicated to editing patches on the Oberheim Matrix-12 and Xpander. In this video, I will introduce the modulation pages used for creating a single mode patch. These operations may at times seem a bit tedious, but after getting some practice it becomes very intuitive and lightning fast to command enticing sounds. Also in this video I'll show how to assign modulations in order to make some intermediate sounds such as a simple Juno bass sound and a classic sync sweep. If you're not sure how to get around in the Matrix-12 programming interface, you might want to check out my previous video first. Before we begin, you'll want to select a patch you wouldn't mind losing. Make an initialized factory patch called Oberheim by pressing clear and store at the same time. The Matrix-12 and Xpander are not unlike modular synthesizers in that you can assign virtually any modulation source to any destination. In fact, nothing really stops you from having a modulator modulate itself, nor can anyone stop you from adding the same modulator to a destination multiple times for greater effect. There is one significant limitation, which is a maximum of 20 modulation routes can be added per patch. From the first video, you have been introduced to a couple of special modulations that can even go in between modulation paths, such as a tracking generator and the lag function. If all of this makes you want to jump out the first floor window, don't worry, I'll be showing how all of this can be accomplished in this video. Modulation pages live behind every single function that can be modulated in the Matrix-12. In the previous video, I was able to access the modulation page by pressing the button of the function I wanted to modulate. On the filter page, pressing the frequency button shows that envelope 1 has been assigned by default as a convention. Hitting page 2 button returns you back to page 1. Modulation sources can be added and deleted on the modulation pages using the modulation source select buttons. Above the buttons are labels indicating the possible sources. Below these buttons are numeric X select buttons used to choose a source that has multiples, like one of the 5 envelopes or one of the LFOs. An LED will flash when you are prompted to choose one of these multiple X-select sources. On a modulation page, if a modulation exists that you wish to delete, press and hold that modulations button and press clear. In this case, resonance is prompting me to select my first modulation source. I'll add keyboard and set a negative value such that higher notes will decrease the amount of resonance. When a function is being modulated, a small dot will appear next to the function's name. Now I'll make a simple Juno bass sound similar to the Juno 106. Go ahead and load the factory initialized patch at this time. The Juno 106 gets its sound from a single oscillator per voice, but yet it has a sub-oscillator to fatten up the bottom end. I will emulate this by setting VCO1 frequency to 12 and making it a pulse wave. For VCO2 frequency, I'll set that to 0, and it also becomes a pulse. The Juno 106 has only one envelope, which it is possible to have it control both the filter and the amplifier at the same time. On the Matrix-12, the filter is usually controlled by envelope 1 and can be checked on the VCF modulation page. Yep. I'll also set the mode to 2-pole low pass, since it corresponds to the 12 decibel per octave filter type that the Juno 106 uses. VCA2 is usually controlled by envelope 2, so in the case of making a Juno 106 sound, I'll change it to also be controlled by envelope 1. So far the sound is a simple on-off gate. Good punchy Juno bass sounds have a really short filtered decay. go to envelope 1, kill the sustain, and raise the decay until just right. The Juno 106 has a switch to optionally assign an LFO to pitch or to pulse width. How about assigning some LFO to pitch? I'll go to the LFO1 page and turn down the speed a bit. How does VCO1 sound with a saw wave instead of a pulse? How about lowering the filter envelope amount? Pretty cool. This time you can name and save your patch if you like, but as before, bring up the initial patch to continue. Next we'll make a sync sweep sound, like those heard in classic pop rock songs and the occasional 80s movie soundtrack. Some of the warmest sync sounds come from the Prophet 5 and Memory Moog synthesizers. It sounds just as good on the Matrix-12. Set VCO1 and VCO2 to have an initial frequency of 0 and set the waveforms to pulse. A quick look at the VCF settings has a warm 4-pole low-pass filter and a cutoff frequency around 91. For envelope 1 and 2, I will leave their settings alone. When all envelope points are set to 0 except for sustain, the dynamics will behave like a simple on-off gate. And that's what I want for a lead sound like this. An abrupt either on or off dynamic is good for this. Returning to VCO2, this is where all the action happens. On page 2, toggle the sync feature on. Remember that sync forces oscillator 2 to have the same pitch as oscillator 1. So when the pitch of oscillator 2 is changed, you can hear the effect. What I want to do is assign a modulation source to perform this frequency change for me. For this task, I will use envelope 3. The sync effect is too fast, so I'll make some changes to envelope 3. That's sounding pretty good. But check this out. I'll return to the VCO2 page once again and add yet another instance of envelope 3 to the mod page and crank that baby up. In this way, the Matrix-12 has no problem adding the same modulator to a destination multiple times for greater effect. Crazy stuff. Once again, save the patch if so desired. Thank you so much for watching. In my next video, I'll show how to assign modulations in order to make some intermediate sounds, such as an old-school rave Hoover sound and a hi-fi crescendo deep chord, which you might remember from the end of tutorial 1.